630 WOCA.
Ocala.
Diamonds in the sunset, now your time has come. A pretty yellow bird fly
All right,
away.
5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. You know, in this age, we try to do everything. It looks like we, and by we, I mean humanity, all of humanity. We try to do something so that tomorrow is a little bit better than today, and today is a little bit better than yesterday. And one of those things that we kind of celebrate is the fact that we develop things like technology, for example, and we make things better. And sometimes we lose sight of the fact that sometimes in an effort to make things better, there's really somebody trying to make money at the same time. And that's an important part to remember, because we want to say, okay, this is better, but is it really self-serving for somebody out there somewhere? And I'm not an anti-progress kind of a guy, obviously. I mean, I'm working radio. Radio is as good as it gets. No, I'm teasing. We were talking about GMO, genetically modified organisms, some time ago. Even again this morning on the gardening show, we were talking about it. And I guess the expression GMO, or genetically modified organisms, came to our attention when we had a story on farmers in India. Remember this story? And the farmers in India were starving, were not able to have seed from their crops because the modifications caused their crops to grow, but they wouldn't produce seed. And then they wouldn't be able to buy more seed because they were poor, and it was a big snowballing effect that sounded devastating to me. There is a film that helps us understand this, and it's going to be at the Marion Theater. It's called GMO OMG. Boy, you couldn't have picked a better title. I mean, in this day and age, OMG, everybody knows what that means, right? The premiere of the movie documentary GMO OMG, asking the question, how do genetically modified organisms affect our children, the health of our planet, and our freedom of choice? The free showing of this movie is on Friday at the Marion Theater at 7:15 p.m. Dr. David B. Kuhn is in the studio with his beautiful wife, Susie, and I understand Susie's got some background in helping autistic children, and there might be a connection here. I just found out. David is board certified in internal medicine and the founder of Trinity Healthcare Medical Center here in Ocala. So, with all that said, good morning to both of you.
Good morning. I appreciate everybody having us here.
And have you seen any evidence that genetically modified? This discussion this morning that butterflies die when they eat the genetically modified corn. Is that right?
Well, that's right. The question is the alterations that are happening with these crops. Are they unsafe or safe? The manufacturers spend a good deal of money ensuring that we believe that everything that we're eating is safe. The evidence is mounting that they are, in fact, unsafe, or at least potentially unsafe. And bees is an example. The monarchs is another example. Right. And as this evidence is more and more apparent, it comes, to light. I think that there's a real risk here, and people need to be aware of it.
So I have a question, because the other side of this argument will say this.
Yes.
They will say, we've been genetically modifying organisms for hundreds of years. We've taken the pollen from this one and put it with the pollen from that one. Is that the same thing?
It's not the same thing. Okay. Crossbreeding is a different mechanism, and that's absolutely a thing that's been a mainstay of the agriculture industry for, absolutely right, for many hundreds of years, or more, I'm sure. Only recently, GMOs were introduced in the mid-1990s, and it's an entirely different mechanism of inserting the DNA of one species and sticking it into the DNA of another species. It might be a bacteria, a virus, and they will pull pieces of DNA out of that organism and insert it by force into the DNA of a plant, a crop, a corn, et cetera, et cetera.
Sort of like steroids.
It kind of is. It kind of is.
So let's see. Satisfy my skepticism, not about what you're saying, but about somebody's motives for doing these things. Would it be if I create a plant that does not create seed, then I have a situation where you have to come to me for the seed?
Absolutely right.
Was that intentional?
Of course it is. It used to be in the old days, local guys who owned a farm, would plant seeds, grow a crop, and at the end of the crop, at the end of the harvest, they would make sure that they saved, a certain amount of seeds, to plant next year, at the next. But if you buy your seeds from a company, a large company, who is interested in the money,
like
Monsanto is the main example, then you are not allowed to replant the seeds of that crop. You have to buy all new seeds again every single year. In that, they have patented the technology, and because there's a patent of the technology, you're not allowed to reuse it. You have to buy again.
So if we see the film, and you're educating people who may be totally oblivious to this.
Absolutely.
So now we have an opinion after we see the film. What do we do with that opinion? Do we write Congress? What do we do with it?
Well, that is going to be a part of the event is an announcement and information on how to get in contact with our local elected officials. In this case, the next official that a person would want to be in contact with is Dorothy Huckel, and all of her contact information is going to be made available at the event. We have a labeling bill that is currently in progress in the state, SB 558, and it's stalled at this moment in committee.
But if it were to pass, then the label itself would tell me whether I'm buying a genetically modified product or something?
That is right. At this point, because there's no conclusive definitive evidence, or a better way to explain it is no long-term human studies have ever been done to prove that they are safe for consumption. We have an approach that how about we just make it and let's see if it's okay or not. But the problem is we're seeing a dramatic increase in a number of illnesses.
So now, and I just learned this morning, that the nation of Sri Lanka is a nation that has 100% outlawed genetically modified organisms.
One of many.
Yes. Oh, is that right? One of many?
One of many.
Okay, so I have a question about that. If some nations are already outlawing the presence of genetically modified organisms, then could the marketplace literally be the thing that fixes the problem? In other words, the poor farmers in India that we read about, couldn't they say, okay, I'm not going to buy anymore from the United States because they've got Monsanto and they're selling me these things that I don't want. Can I go to Sri Lanka or one of the other countries and buy my seed? And then suddenly the marketplace says, well, wait a minute, there's a demand for non-genetically modified organisms, and wouldn't that be the fix?
Well, exactly right. It's to inform people, allow them to make a choice. A person is unable to make a choice about a food item. Is this healthy or unhealthy if they don't even know?
If they don't know,
the
absolutely.
ingredients?
Yeah.
And the example of these, men in India, a terrible thing, and they're in great debt to these companies who they have to buy, the seeds. When a person in India dies, the debt that they have incurred in their lifetime, it goes away. That's by Indian law, and so that's a part of the reason that this kind of thing was occurring in India. It's just unfortunate thing, very, very sad.
Right. Susie, before we went on the air, you implied that there might be a connection, and forgive me if I misunderstood that, a connection with genetically modified organisms and maybe some birth defects like autism. Is that right?
Certainly. Basically, since the mid-1990s, we've seen a 400% increase in ADHD, 300% increase in asthma, 400% increase in food allergies in children.
Oh, really?
And a 1,500% increase in autism. So it's kind of startling that those figures have...
And does it coincide with the development of GMOs?
Yes.
So how is a GMO done? I mean, for the layperson, I mean, do they literally microscopically go in there and actually manipulate something like a switch? Or?
A best example is they use a gene gun, and they will literally blast a portion of DNA that they extracted out of another organism into the cells of the plant that they're trying to introduce a trait into. And a portion of them stick, and they are able to pick out the cells that accepted this new, DNA trait, and those are the ones that are cloned and become a seed and become a crop and end up in our food.
Why don't they take this one step further, since they're doing this on plants, and then they should just leave the plants alone with the seeds and everything so they reproduce their own self? Why don't they take it one step further to help the genetics in humans when they're born with autism or things of this nature, or when people develop dementia? How come they can't use that technology to try that life-saving?
Well, that's a thing that's occurring, actually, but they're not going with each other. You have the people who are making our food, as he had mentioned earlier. It's about profit. It's about how can we make our product exclusive. You have to buy our product and no one else's.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anybody who is making our food and they're in it for profit, that means that they're probably not in it for our health. In particular,
I see.
These people who make our food, they claim it's fine, it's safe. We've been eating it, for 20 years. There's no evidence to say that it's bad, but we don't want you to know what's in it, though.
Oh.
If it was safe, you'd think they would be proud to label our food is engineered and it's okay to eat. We know it is, but there's only been a couple of studies, and the FDA only requires the manufacturers to say, we've studied it, it's fine, it's safe, it's okay to eat. The FDA doesn't do any independent research on their own to confirm whether or not it's safe. They rely on the manufacturers. The manufacturers say it's up to the FDA. And so they're kind of going back and forth on this.
So the fact that it's an O and not a P, in other words, organism instead of plant, does that imply there are animals that are being genetically modified also?
There are. It's more experimental and not as widespread. I think the main point that we have to concentrate on is our crop in particular. Corn is a good example. Greater than 90% of corn in the United States is GMO corn. And if you look at the ingredient list on, a package of food, any food, almost everything has corn or some kind of a corn-derived ingredient in it. High fructose corn syrup.
That's absolutely
modified
isn't that crazy?
Or soy. 94%
yes.
of soy is genetically modified, and soy is in everything.
It's another thing that's
And when a person thinks they're getting healthy by eating tofu or by eating those soy-based
Burgers.
those
So
products.
soy might be good, but not anymore.
Not anymore, unless it's
Unless it's
non-GMO certified or verified. So.
And this will hit the consumer in their pocket, because if this is passed and they don't have to do any labeling, the prices of cereal will go up. The prices of anything on the shelf will go up.
It may not. I don't think that we're actually going to know. What's interesting about this is people who make our food, if it's made and packaged to be sold in the United States, they don't have to label it. If they make the same product to be sold in Europe, it has to be labeled as a GMO, or they have to alter the ingredients.
Oh, no, that's not right.
I can't understand.
Oh, wow.
It's already happening.
So we need to demand that our labeling
already
indicates it.
happening. It's already
because if
happening.
it's about choice, I mean, if you tell me that, look, this corn over here is genetically modified and that corn's not,
Why would anybody pick the?
and I could tell, from so getting back to the butterfly thing, let me ask you about this. If indeed butterflies die when they eat something that should be edible, that tells us something. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist on this, but Is that covered in the film, by the way?
They do mention a little bit of this. It's interesting. There's a couple of examples of when animals in nature have a choice to choose between a GMO food item and the natural version of that.
Oh, wow.
The animals instinctively choose almost every single time.
They know, huh?
They know.
Wow.
That they just know.
We need to get to know again. We need to. We don't have that instinct, so we need a label.
We're almost too smart, and they alter our food. It's processed, and they mix it in with everything else that comes in a box. If you stick a caveman in an aisle of a grocery store, he's not going to know what to eat because he's going to be looking at food packages and boxes. He's not going to get it at all. And so what we used to think of as
that's a great analogy.
He might enjoy it, though.
Well, he might if he knows it's food or not.
Well, here's the odd thing. Isn't this odd that you have some resistance to what you're trying to convince us of, which is simply labeling? That seems to me a no-brainer.
Just label.
Okay, it's not an unreasonable request, but you have resistance to it. And yet, the same people will go out and eat Little Debbie's. What the heck is that made out of? You think about it, right? It's kind of a weird thing that we have people who say, "Oh, go ahead, Little Debbie won't hurt you."
Right.
Well, and one meal isn't going to, one bad meal isn't going to make you sick, just like one healthy meal isn't going to make you healthy.
Good point.
It has to be a lifestyle. It has to be a choice. I'm going to make a commitment to being healthy overall, and here's how I'm going to, achieve that. I'm going to pick, organic foods. I'm going to increase, intake of vegetables and fruits. I'm going to make sure these things aren't harmful and make sure it's not harming our kids. But if you don't have the information, then you can't decide.
So I want to tell you something. Maybe everybody remembers this. I don't know. But there was an exhibit, I believe, at Epcot that was sponsored by Monsanto. Does anybody remember this?
And
we
The
wrote it.
land.
the land.
Vegetables.
All right, so you go in there, and then while you're waiting for the doors to open so you can go into this thing, you're watching this wonderful video about all the great things. And it's beautiful, and the colors are vibrant, and all the people in it are very healthy looking and happy and smiling. And you go, wow, this company really helps all of us, doesn't it? And it's almost like the Soylent Green movie. Do you guys too young for that? Do you remember this one?
I don't remember that.
Well, what they were doing, they were making it really great to be putting yourself into this death chamber so that you could be later turned into food.
Yeah. It's a classic.
But the idea was, or it's like what's the one with the women are all perfect in that movie?
Stepford Wives.
Stepford Wives. Anybody remember that? It's the perfect world, right? Yeah. Welcome to it. But like you pointed out, it's really about making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money.
That's right. You know what it is it's the responsible application of this biotech is that let's be sure it's okay to eat before we sell it to everybody in America. Let's make sure we have thoroughly studied it, not rely on the manufacturers to say, we've studied it, we did a 90-day trial, it's fine, it didn't hurt anybody, so let's go ahead and market it. And the FDA isn't really watching. In fact, the man, Michael Taylor, who used to work as an attorney for Monsanto, he then went and worked for the USDA. Then he went back and worked as vice president of Monsanto, and he's now the head of food at the FDA.
Wow.
And so it goes back. And anytime anything like that happens in any industry, it's fishy. It's just fishy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know any detail of anything, but it makes you wonder.
Have you had any of your patients come in to see you that you could pinpoint this, and then you had to treat them and tell them they needed to have a different lifestyle?
Oh, really? Yeah.
I'm
trying to really, listeners can't see you shaking your head, but I can see it.
Sure. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine recommends that, or they urge all doctors to advise all their patients to eat a non-GMO diet. And I apply that in my practice as well, and even in our own household.
But how do you know?
I'm sorry?
How do you know what's a non-GMO diet?
Well, it's a combination of a couple of things. Either making a best effort to buy organic as often as possible, and there are a couple of independent agencies out there who are doing a process to ensure that that food item is non-GMO. It's called the Non-GMO project, and they will evaluate and make sure that that food itself is non-GMO.
The reason for your appearance here today is because there's a film being shown, and it is for free. If you want to see it, you will be educated about the GMO situation in our country. Is this the end of real food? Is the subtitle? The movie is titled GMO OMG. It is at the the Marion Theater right there on Magnolia. On Magnolia, everybody knows the Marion Theater. March 7th, which is this Friday, 7:15 p.m. and it is free. It was voted Best Documentary, voted Audience Choice, voted 63 Berlin International Film Festival. 63, what does that mean? 63rd?
I don't know. That was on the award.
It's been around a long time. Are you going to be speaking as well as we'll watch the movie and we'll hear you speak?
Well, we have the gentleman who made the movie itself is going to be in attendance, and he's going to be doing. That's right.
Thank you,
and
Robin.
he's going to be doing a question and answer along with me after the film. And we also have a very special guest, Austin Aries. He's a TNA Impact wrestler on Spike TV every Thursday night at 9.
Wow.
And he is vegan, non-organic, non-GMO, very passionate about health and diet and lifestyle, and he's going to be speaking as well. So we're very glad to have him.
So we're going to be eating popcorn and watching this movie about
popcorn is non-GMO, thankfully, but the oil that they cook it in is GMO, and so it's we're going to have to do the best that we're able to do at the event.
Oh wow! So what is your wish?
The wish in terms of the event itself. Or just
the campaign, not just the event, but the campaign. I think
this is a campaign that's already in progress around our nation, and just information. I think is the most important thing. I want the people of Ocala and the people of our state and the people of the nation to just understand that this exists, because people don't even know that this exists.
Well, that's very important. Yeah, and I think I don't know the hierarchy of the USDA. I don't know if Congress can mandate that they behave a certain way or whatever. But if all you're really asking, and this is what it sounds like you're asking labeling, period.
Yes. That's right.
And that seems so reasonable.
Absolutely.
How can anybody say no to that? So you educate us. Mm-hmm. We then write our congressman. They then come to a conclusion. You would hope. Mm-hmm. We would hope. Say that again. We would hope.
Yes.
And then they dictate to the USDA. Look. From now on, in America, we want a label that has a little thing on it that says this is non-NGO or what do you call it?
You know what? It's not a partisan issue. The bill in Maine that passed at the end of last year.
How could it be?
That's right. It passed by a vote of 143 to 3, and so it's not a partisan issue. 91% of Americans who are polled, when they know what GMO is, want it labeled. It is as common sense as it gets. But the manufacturers have spent over $100 million to defeat labeling bills, companies like Pepsi and Coke and Kraft and all these people, because they don't want it labeled, because they know that we as a consumer, if we see a label that says that it contains a genetically modified ingredient, then we won't want to buy it, and their profit goes down.
All right, let me try to be the devil's advocate here for a second. Okay. If nothing is genetically modified anymore, because the marketplace simply isn't supporting it anymore, because the labeling is there, nobody's buying it, and Monsanto has closed its doors. Okay. If that's the case, then here's the devil's advocate coming out. There will be people starving all over the world because GMOs provide more food, and therefore we can feed more people on this planet because of the modifications we've made.
Well, it's not exactly true. Every year, we manufacture enough food in the world to feed 11 billion people, and we only have a little over 6 billion people in the world. And so we're already way overdoing it in food.
Oh, wow.
It's not a problem of there's not enough available. The problem is that we have tons of food in America, and we throw away 100 billion pounds of food every year and all of this stuff.
Right.
That's the issue here, is it's not that GMOs are helping to feed the world. In fact, there's been a number of studies that indicate that that isn't the case, and that the yields are not always higher. In fact, often they're less than regular organic farming. And so if people understand, what's really, occurring here, I think it's a no-brainer issue. It really is a no-brainer issue.
Because children are brought up, they have to read the labels. They have to learn about this. They're told about anti-smoking, anti-drug, all of those kinds of campaigns. Well, we should have this kind of campaign now, anti-GMOs, and they should be, given to the school children, because now the school children have to eat school lunches, and how do we know that there aren't any GMOs in their food?
And that's a great, point. And I would like Ocala, to be a leader in our area as stepping up and saying, because it can happen on a community level. Mm-hmm. And if we spread the word and we get our elected, officials involved and aware, when I spoke to her office,
Dorothy Hukos.
That's right. It's going to hit her committee next month, and they had yet to even hear of the bill. And so, that's how kind of uninformed everybody is about this.
Yeah, you've got a lot of work ahead of you. This is part of it, but yeah.
Exactly right.
And again, it is so reasonable to just ask for labeling.
That's it.
Is there another company, I guess, for lack of, I don't know how to even ask this question, but there's Monsanto. Is there somebody making the genetically modified? Is there
a good guy?
Is there a good guy? And is there a good part of Monsanto? We had this morning, 93% of all the cotton grown in America is genetically modified.
That's right.
Okay. Is that a problem, cotton? I mean, this is a cloth. We wear this. We don't eat it.
Right. It's not a problem in terms of the clothing, but it's a problem in terms of the insects that are eating this.
Oh, the boll weevil.
Well, that's the thing. And so, but even that one is beginning to develop a resistance to this crop. And so what does that mean when that insect, they make crops that are able to withstand big doses of Roundup, and they spray Roundup all over all the fields.
Right,
and so that's
right.
increasing, glyphosate, which is, the main toxin in Roundup. But the problem is the weeds are developing a resistance to Roundup. And so they're now in development of a new herbicide, which was a component of Agent Orange. It's called 2,4-D. And so we're beginning to tread into probably some dangerous ground here, and we're headed in the wrong way. We're trying to globalize, to feed the world on a global level instead of local level. It's always been local agriculture, local and sustainable organic agriculture. Let's feed our town, our community.
Before we feed the world.
Do you know what it sounds like when there's a campaign to elect somebody, and there's two people running, and you have the guy with the money and the guy without the money. The guy with the money can always make his story look so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can have these wonderful videos and just really very, very persuasive. The little guy doesn't have that. All the little guy has really is words. You can write a blog, you can talk on a radio show, and hopefully we've contributed a little bit to that. And good for you for
Thank you.
Going around and doing this.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we need to be educated, and we're not asking anybody to come to any conclusions until you've exposed yourself to the information, right?
Absolutely right. Just to inform them and let them decide for themselves.
And just based on what you've said, I can't imagine anybody saying no to labeling.
Seems like a no-brainer to me.
It sounds like this is big giant saying no labeling.
Exactly.
And here's why, because we are pretty people all over here.
That's right.
All right. Dr. David Kuhn and Susie Kuhn, thank you both for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you very much.
For the listeners, the movie is at the theater. It's also on Amazon, is that right?
It's not on Amazon yet. It's not yet in wide release.
It's not there yet. Okay.
It's only private release.
Somebody called me with that,
nice.
and it's not true. Okay. So GMO OMG at the Marion Theater this Friday, 7:15. It's free. The popcorn's probably okay too. I would think.
I would think so.
I would think. GMOfilm.com is the website. Any other information we should leave with the listeners?
If there's any questions or they'd like to request a ticket, just email ocalagmomovie@gmail.com.
So I do have one more. Let's say you're at the theater and you have somebody in the audience who's an expert for the other side. Do you engage in debate with that person?
Well, it's going to be difficult, to change a mind. We're most interested in passing along information to people who are entirely unaware of this. To engage in a debate or a battle at an event like
not
that.
a good time to do
I
it.
think is probably not.
Probably, because time constraints and everything.
That's right. It'll have to be a parking lot discussion.
And since you mentioned Dorothy Huckel, if people do want to lobby for or against it, they would have an opportunity to go up there and, while the bill is in session and speak their mind.
Absolutely right. I encourage everybody to do it, and that information is available on each of their websites.
It's a fascinating topic, and I'm not even pretending to say I understand it, but I do understand the labeling. I don't understand why that would be an issue. That seems like a no-brainer. Well, again, thank you both for coming in here, and call us if you need any of that repeated. And plus, this video that we just made just now of your interview is going to be on Facebook and YouTube by 2 o'clock today.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Dr. David Kuhn, and Susie Kuhn, thank you both. We will take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Habitat for Humanity of Marion County is a ministry dedicated to improving lives by providing affordable and decent housing. Help them help others by visiting the Habitat for Humanity Ocala Restore at